Thank you. There could potentially be a moment where you just thinking about our group yesterday, like in the middle of what we're saying, I think there are opportunities to say something like, this is why having conservatives with us is so important. Like we're talking margins and yeah, something like explicit like that, I think would be good. Yeah, I think it's just important that when we discuss conservative talking points that we don't talk about them as if conservatives are these people over there, because there are people in the audience too that feel that they identify that way, you know?
Yes, I would too, and read everything last night this morning, and I think it's not about, it's just about the facts.
Yeah. So I think I tend to feel like us as staff are usually fine when we talk. It's outside speakers that will say something usually.
Are you all ready to move on? And you talked to Tiff, who told you about the phone and the birthday?
Yes.
Good. I'm gonna announce someone's phone and the birthday.
Oh yes. Okay.
Right. All right. Here we go.
Hello, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. I'm sure everyone is wide awake right now. Am I right? Yes. Okay, yeah, sure. Well, this is the time where I'll say if you see that your friend is not here, there are members of your group missing, please text them. This session is really getting into details about the ask, right? So yesterday we were really diving into what is SNAP, what is Medicaid. We're not exactly going to talk about that right now, not the details of those programs, but rather what is the political climate that we're kind of lobbying within, and what are some points that we can make very effectively in an office, especially if we encounter pushback. So we have some experts on the stage from FCNL staff, and before I introduce them, I'll just make a couple quick announcements. So first of all, someone left a phone. There was a phone found, I don't know where. There is a background of a snowy something. There's like snowy trees. Yay, we found the owner. Okay, yes, we hate to lose our phones. I also just want to say we have a birthday today. Holly Wilson from Michigan United. Happy birthday, Holly. Okay, yeah. Let's sing once. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday.
Holly.
Happy birthday to you.
And Holly is just one of our fabulous delegation leaders who has brought dozens of people from Michigan over the last couple years. So thank you, Holly. Happy birthday. All right, two other quick announcements. First is the fact that today is the first day of caucus groups. So again, this is optional, but it is a great opportunity to meet people within a same identity or lived experience. And you can find more info towards the registration table about what those caucus groups are, what rooms they're meeting in. And these are during lunch today and also during lunch tomorrow. So just don't forget to go check that out if you're interested. And then finally, I said this yesterday, but there are office hours at 5 o'clock today with some of our experts on stage. That will be a good time to ask any lingering questions. There's always so many hands up. We can't get to everyone from the stage, but you can go to those office hours and hopefully get some more specific questions answered. And at the same time, our designated listener, Dr. Munaza, who you all met yesterday, she will be having also office hours in Washington 1. So if you have struggled to find her or for some reason you haven't found the time to go talk to her, she will have a specific time at 5 o'clock at the same office hour time in Washington 1 where you can go talk to her more directly if you need that. So those are all our announcements. And now we're going to get into what we're calling the Ask Explained. So like I said, this will really be about not just the political climate and what that means for like how we can be most effective in our lobbying, but some important talking points as well that can help everyone. So I'll just hand it right over to Amelia to get us started. Amelia, like I said, is our lead lobbyist for economic justice, also the director of our the director of our policy and advocacy department. And then Katherine is our program assistant, not just for economic justice, but also for justice reform. So we're going to learn a lot from the two of them, and I'll hand it over to you now, Amelia.
Great, thanks. How's everyone doing? How you doing? All right, that's a little better. All right, it's Sunday morning. So Katherine and I want you both to first take out your leave behind. This document right here. And you see, this is the ask in blue, oppose cuts to Medicaid and SNAP and reconciliation. We're going to say that together. Okay? So ready? This is the ask. Oppose cuts to Medicaid and SNAP in reconciliation. Let's do it one more time. Oppose cuts to Medicaid and SNAP in reconciliation. Excellent.
Yeah, so can I get 3 volunteers? We're going to do a little test. How well do you remember from what's at stake at the budget debate? Any information that you retain just to get a feeler on how well the panel went over? Do I have 3 brave people in this beautiful crowd of human beings? I will voluntold if I get no, I'm not perfect. And I have one more. So we can get started over there. Red shirt. I think Vanessa over here in the left corner. Thank you.
Do I have to reintroduce myself?
Not if you want, don't want to.
I can. I haven't met y'all yet. So
Okay.
My name is Bailey.
Nice
I'm
to
with
meet you.
Agnes Scott. We have 70 million people who are on Medicaid and about 40 million people who rely on SNAP, and about 25% of individuals within America rely on some sort of program. So it would be pretty detrimental to anybody who is on one of those programs, especially in rural areas.
Period. You had designated everything.
Nice
I
work.
love that one.
Nice.
Okay, we're gonna do the middle over here in the yellow sweater. It was perfect. Right here. Do you still want to do it? Yellow sweater? Yeah. Okay, perfect. And then my next victim will be on this side to balance it out. Just to pull it out.
Hi, I'm Joe, also Agnes Scott College. Yeah, and one thing that I took away from yesterday was that the proposed budget cuts are really just budget, like moving over the budget to things that are just like objectively bad, like further militarization, building more weapons to sell to other countries, militarizing the border further, tax cuts for the wealthy, things that are objectively bad and harm American citizens rather than giving us the resources to become healthy and become our best selves.
Absolutely. You could be up here. I don't need to. You got it. Okay. I did warn, gave a preface. So anybody on this side brave enough to do our last before we get into the nitty? Oh, I see a hand in the back. Thank you so much.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Cheryl. I took away a lot, but what I most took away from it is, as a kindergarten teacher, public schools will be highly affected by the cuts. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thanks everyone. Yeah, I'm also impressed at how much everyone retained. That's great. I love it. So let's start now. I'll ask y'all some questions. So Amelia and Katherine, can you remind us why our lobbying for Medicaid and SNAP is happening at such a good time?
Yeah, so you in this moment, in this seat right now, it is the perfect time for you to be at Spring Lobby Weekend because they are trying to push this huge budget reconciliation bill in Congress, like we said, to cut Medicaid and SNAP. And I think Amelia has specifics on it.
Well, I was just going to ask you, Katherine.
Okay.
Clarify some things for us,
Okay.
okay? Didn't Congress just pass a budget like a week ago? I remember seeing a lot of things. People were upset at Schumer. What are we talking about? Isn't that old news?
Yes. So if anybody has seen that stand-up Chuck meme, this is unrelated. That is, so the federal government passed or tried to attempt it to pass an annual spending bill, but what we are focused on today is a budget reconciliation, and we will get the more details about exactly what that is.
Okay, good. I'm glad we started there because, yeah, there's a lot in the news. And I did get some questions even before this event about where we fit into all this budget stuff that's being talked about. So really emphasizing that we are talking about this special budget process called reconciliation. So making sure that we just bring it back to that process. So if we're focused on reconciliation, what is that exactly?
Yeah, good question. So budget reconciliation is usually used when one party controls both the House, the Senate, and the White House. And it allows Congress to pass legislation with extra budget impacts outside of the regular spending process that Katherine was talking about, and allows them to do it extra fast.
Yes, so the extra fast is we don't have to have the normal 60 votes in the Senate. With this one, we just need a simple majority, so a 51 will do.
Okay, so that's really helpful to know. This special process makes it so that the budget bill can pass. This budget bill can pass with fewer votes than normal bills, right? So that is important to keep in mind when we're thinking about what process we're actually working with. So where do we fit into that process? If it's like a fast track type of bill, where are we fitting into that?
Right. So budget reconciliation, it is a two-step process. Okay. So step one is they have to pass a budget resolution, the same budget resolution in the House and the Senate. And the budget resolution essentially says how much they are going to cut. It tells different committees, like Agriculture Committee, you need to cut this amount of money. Energy and Commerce Committee, you need to cut this amount of money. And the exact same numbers have to be passed in both the House and the Senate. This is where we are in the process of deciding how much, what those numbers are.
Yeah, and so step 2 is the execution phase, put simply. So committees will decide what's in their toolbox on how to exactly get these cuts made and what policies to reach those budget number. So each committee will do this, write their own bill. It gets put together in all one big bill that gets put on the floor, and then we can fast track vote it through.
And we know that the plan is to cut Medicaid and SNAP because we've seen this come out from leadership. We've seen a lot of proposals. A lot has been reported in the news. The question is, what are the numbers and can we push back on that?
Yeah, thank you for emphasizing that. So step 1 of this process, how much is going to be cut? Step 2, where is that coming from? So it's important to remember that we are currently deciding, by we, I mean Congress. Congress is currently deciding on those numbers. But you did just say that some plans are already kind of out there. We already know what the plan is. So there are some draft numbers. Even though they're still agreeing on numbers, there are some draft numbers being discussed. So can you say more about how much Congress is talking about cutting from the budget right now?
So the House budget resolution, and we heard Indy and Don and Jamie talk about this yesterday. The House budget resolution essentially cuts Medicaid by $880 billion and SNAP by up to $230 billion. But that's not the final version, right? Because that cannot necessarily pass the Senate. And so they need to agree upon numbers that will be the same numbers that can pass both the House and the Senate. So they need to agree upon final numbers. And we have an opportunity right now to push back on that and what those numbers are.
Yeah, so that's why Tuesday is so important, because we do not have that joint budget resolution. So all of you beautiful people will have the opportunity to influence your members of Congress so we can bring those numbers down the best we can possibly do.
And that's why this timing is so important. They are trying to do this in the next couple weeks. They might not be able to, but that is the real pressure to be able to try and pass a joint budget resolution in the next few weeks. And our job is to show that there is not the support. In fact, there is strong opposition to cutting Medicaid and SNAP. Once the budget resolution passes and the numbers are there, then the committees kind of will write the exact language, and we expect that to happen probably in the summer.
Yes, but even though we said the summer, again, this is a big moment of influence because once pen is put to paper and the bill is actually written, because the Senate and House are both controlled by Republicans, everybody in the Republican Party will be kind of forced to fall in line with that vote and move the budget resolution, budget resolution forward to get towards reconciliation.
Okay, so let's just talk more about the political climate surrounding the bill. Is it really possible for us to protect Medicaid and SNAP with our lobbying? Like, can we actually get them to change their mind on the numbers, actually come up with lower numbers so we don't lose Medicaid and SNAP? Is that possible?
Yes, please, please do not feel defeated. You are going up against big people, but at the same time, their timeline process has already been delayed multiple times. They originally wanted to get this done in the first 100 days, and it does not look like they're going to. The longer we drag this out, the more momentum they will lose. And overall, what we're trying to achieve with our ask will probably be achieved.
So, and we have seen part of the reason that the timeline has been pushed back is because of public pressure. So you being up here right now will have an impact, will help make a difference. The margins in the House and the Senate are incredibly tight. So this is why your voices are very important. This is why conservative voices are particularly important in this moment. We can win on this. So there's going to be a lot, as Katherine said, a lot of pressure. This is the president's signature agenda to be able to pass something. But on this, particularly on Medicaid and SNAP, we can really potentially win on this. We can prevent Congress from taking away healthcare and food assistance from tens of millions of people in this country.
Okay, so let's talk about pushbacks. You know, you might be in a lobby visit where they totally agree with you, in which case you ask them to do more. You say, okay, great, you agree with me. Please make a public statement. Please put this on your social media. Please talk to your colleagues. But if you're in a lobby visit where they don't agree with you, they do not agree with our ask, then that is where we want to make sure you are really equipped with the right questions, the right talking points. So what might a legislative office say to oppose our ask?
So there are two big things that you will likely say, and it will come in a form of, we don't want to take healthcare away from anyone, right? I think generally speaking, but you might hear something like, we just want to make sure that people who are receiving these benefits are working, or states need to pay their fair share. So we want to dig into those two things because we think those are the two primary ways in which we're expecting potential cuts to Medicaid and SNAP.
Yes, but don't let people throw a stone and then hide their hands. Regardless if it's a work requirement or if they're trying to shift costs to states, you are kicking people off these programs. That is the only reason why you can have this budget saving tool that they're talking about.
So let's take those two things one at a time. So you mentioned that a legislative office might say, we're not opposed to Medicaid and SNAP, but we just want to make sure that everyone who receives these benefits is working. You might hear that. So can you say more about work requirements and how to counter that point in a lobby visit?
So work requirements, basically, you can't get the benefit unless you're proving to be working. SNAP currently has work requirements. If you're between 18 and 49, you can only get the benefits up to 3 months. After that, you cannot access it for another 3 years. So that is some of the work requirements, administrative burden that we're talking about.
Now, SNAP has some important exceptions to these time limits or work requirements. For example, parents with young kids are exempted because childcare is really expensive. The elderly, people experiencing homelessness, people who are in places where there is high unemployment, because it doesn't make sense to penalize you for not having a job when there are no jobs to have, right?
Yeah, and Medicaid overall does not have work requirements. I know Dawn talked about specifically in Idaho that the governor did sign in a law, but in general, it does not have work requirements in the program.
So the big kind of work requirements that we could see around SNAP and Medicaid are, one, impose work requirements just generally on Medicaid. And number two is get rid of some of these exceptions to the SNAP work requirements. So Katherine, why are work requirements, why is that problematic?
Because people are already working. It is that simple. And if they aren't working, it is for valid reasons like taking care of a small children. If it's a person that has a disability or a mental health problem or just a health problem in general that prevents them from working. Even going to school is one of the reasons why people don't fit the work requirements that we're talking about.
Secondly, we can say there's a lot of data that shows that work requirements don't work, right? So even what they end up doing is just kicking people off the program. So we saw Arkansas actually tested this out. I think Jamie mentioned this. Arkansas tried to put work requirements on Medicaid. Within the first 7 months, 18,000 people lost their health insurance. Not because they weren't working, but because they weren't able to comply with the bureaucratic red tape. How many people do you think are at risk of losing health care if there are work requirements added to Medicaid? Who? Yes. If you've been reading the Leave Behind, you might know. Just shout it out. A lot. Any numbers? Who thinks at least 100 people are at risk of losing health? Raise your hand. Yeah, there you go. 1,000, 10,000, 1 million, 2 million, 10 million, 20 million, 30 million, 36 million people. 36 million people are at risk of losing their health coverage if work requirements are put on Medicaid.
And then when it comes to work requirements, we have to look at the rhetoric of why people are saying of who is deserving of these programs. We did have that conversation yesterday with Indy and Jamie and Dawn, but just wanted to reiterate that it stands on often a racist and problematic narrative of who is deserving of assistance and who is deserving to have this livelihood. We can hear this back with Reagan. We have things called the welfare queen about Black women, but also just a combination of race, gender, disability, immigration status of who is deserving of these benefits and who is not. And we never ask billionaires who is deserving of these tax cuts. So why are we trying to take this from low income people?
Finally, it's important to note SNAP is not a jobs program. It is a nutrition program. Medicaid is not a jobs program. It is a healthcare program. If we want to get more people into the workforce, we should be addressing the barriers to employment, not taking away food and healthcare, right? We know that taking away food and healthcare will not make it easier to get a job.
Okay, so that was a little bit on the work requirements, and you mentioned a second pushback that you might hear. So similar, you might hear that, again, we don't want to cut Medicaid and SNAP necessarily, but we just want states to take care of it and not the federal government's budget. So you might hear something about states actually covering that stuff instead of congressional money. Can you say more about that? State budgets for Medicaid and SNAP. What can someone say if they hear that in an office?
Yeah, so the verbiage that you'll hear is we want to have states have more skin in the game. We want states to pay their fair share. But the reality is states do not have the budget to cover these crucial programs. If you're from Texas, if you're from Idaho, if you're from Georgia, do you think your state will pay for Medicaid? I'm seeing head shaking up. Exactly. So if they move these costs to states, it is the same way as shutting down the programs, cutting federal funding to Medicaid and SNAP. People just lose their benefits. End of story.
So one thing to note too about these are structural changes to the program. And once we make structural changes to these programs like this, it is very hard to get it back, right? It's harder to reverse such structural changes. So once the federal government reduces the amount that it is contributing, it's unlikely for that to shift back in the future.
I think it's so important to hear what they're saying about how, they, like, legislative offices might say that they are supporting Medicaid and SNAP, but if they're pushing for work requirements or if they're pushing for states to take care of it instead of the federal government, it doesn't really matter that they're saying that they care about Medicaid and SNAP, because that action will result in millions of people losing access. So that is really important. That is really important to remember if you're in an office and you hear that pushback. So we do want to spend way more time actually getting to questions from the audience. But before that, let's hear some final words of encouragement. Amelia and Katherine, please.
So when I'm in congressional meetings with staffers, we always ask at the end, what more can we do? And the response is set up meetings. Constituent meetings, mainly sharing your story, is the best possibility to influence this legislation so we can protect these programs. And we'll be asking y'all to repeat the ask in a due moment. So prepare yourselves.
So I'll just say, you've heard, this has been a lot of information. You don't need to know or remember all of it. The most important thing is that Congress should not be taking healthcare and food assistance away from people. That's it. That is the main thing. If you remember nothing else, just remember that. Yes.
So are we ready to repeat the ask one more time in unison?
Ready?
Okay, 1, 2, 3.
Oppose cuts to Medicaid and SNAP in reconciliation.
Perfect.
You're ready.
That is so good.
Look at that. Thank you. And thank you both. So let's take questions from the audience. Are there questions? Okay, I'll start over here and I'll kind of just do this sweeping. Okay, Sarah over here. Can you raise your hand again, Sarah? Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, thank you all. In a couple of previous budget cycles, we've sometimes seen some like fringe elements of the Republican Party peeled off of like the mainstream conservative consensus for generally some kind of inscrutable reasons. As far as this upcoming like reconciliation process, have we seen any like motions from like the like House Freedom Caucus or anything that could potentially make the math on this a little bit easier?
So I can add. It's really interesting because you do have this really broad spectrum of where people are. So in order to, the House did pass one version of the budget resolution. That will not be the final version. It was very hard. Speaker Johnson was telling the Freedom Caucus, don't worry, we're going to be cutting these programs more, and telling more of the moderates, don't worry, we're not going to cut these programs as much. Right. So it is very tight. And what we can do, we know that outreach to a lot of the members, particularly many of the moderate members, like feel like this is going to impact so many people in so many districts across the country, and people coming and saying, please don't take away healthcare from me and my friends and community members, really is having an impact. So I think what we are doing in terms of pushing back and the message that you are carrying is so important, because many members across this political spectrum really do feel uncomfortable and don't want to make these sorts of cuts. That sort of adds, so I think what we're trying to do and where we can have the most impact is getting as many members of Congress to go to leadership, to go and say, I can't vote for a budget that cuts SNAP and Medicaid by this much. That's
Yeah, and I'll just quickly add, like Amelia was saying earlier about how tight the margins are, and it's just it's really important that there is so much diversity in this room and that we're talking to so many different types of offices, because we need Republicans, Democrats, independents, and everything in between to actually make this work. And we have them in this room, and we're lobbying them on Tuesday, all of those different groups. And so I really, really am feeling hopeful as well for that reason. So thank you for that question and that answer. Okay, is there something in the middle here? Okay, I see someone in the front, and then I'll go to the back. Thanks, Sean.
Okay, hi. Give me just a second. So I'm Rory. I'm from Agnes Scott, and Agnes Scott's in Georgia. And Georgia is one of the few states that does have a work requirement. And I kind of wanted to talk about that in the sense that we've seen very real effects from it. So I do have it pulled up currently. So we introduced the Georgia Pathways program. And this has an 80 hours of work or volunteer activities each month is a condition to getting and keeping their coverage. When they introduced this, they estimated that 240,000 people would join. As of 2024, in November, about 5,500 people are covered under Pathways because it is so incredibly hard to get it. So I think that using these examples of very real impacts is really important, and it's ridiculous to see. As many of you have noticed, I'm disabled. I use a crutch. That causes a lot of issues getting a steady job for anyone. And so if I were to need the Pathways program, there's a very likely chance that I would not get it. I grew up on Georgia Peach State, which is our Medicare program for children. And it's also incredibly hard to get on. It's also incredibly hard to get off of it, by the way. We're still trying. But I think considering everybody is really important, but also considering them in a non-savior manner. We are not coming to save people. We are coming to help people. So just thinking about everyone in the sense that they may be able to work, but there are barricades up and discrimination and so many things that
getting work is hard, and having a work requirement is ridiculous to expect from everyone.
Yeah.
So I would really encourage looking at states that do have this work requirement and those effects to go in and say, these work requirements are not realistic. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I did see a hand in the back over here. Yeah, right next to you, Vanessa. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Charlotte. I'm from Gettysburg College. My question was, how do we respond to the argument that the administration is investing in the people in other ways through things like drilling and manufacturing? We know that these bring health concerns, environmental concerns that are just going to reinforce the cycles that we're seeing. And I know that the argument has brought, well, we're transferring this money to other things that still help the people in other ways. So how would you recommend we respond to that? We're from South Central PA, so we see some impacts of that. So this is a very realistic argument that we would encounter.
So people should still have health care. People still need food assistance. I mean, that would be I like anytime you see stuff kind of going in this other direction, I think bringing it back to what this is about. Okay, invest in people in other ways. Like you can have that conversation, but like we still shouldn't be taking health coverage and food away from people. And I think just coming anytime it starts to kind of, or you feel out of your depth, or they start talking about process or anything like that, just come back to, but I think we can all agree upon, we don't want to be taking healthcare and food assistance away from people who are struggling. Or yeah, especially in this economic environment right now, this is not the time to be making those sorts of cuts.
Yeah, if you do get that pushback, I internally would say don't let them give you the runaround to it and bring it back to the center of why you came to that lobby visit, because these are basic human rights that we are talking about. So just reemphasizing that, and don't let them, oh, but over here and over here. It's like, no, I'm talking about this. So yeah, but thank you for the question.
Okay, I'll come over to this side of the room. There's a question here in the front.
Hello, I'm Ben from the Wilmington College delegation. And so my question is, how will states paying the burden of these programs affect taxes in my life as well as other people's who pay taxes?
Great question. So a couple things. So right, if costs get shifted to states, states have a few options. They can either try and raise taxes to try and offset that, so that families might be having to pay more in taxes, and oftentimes that comes in the form of more regressive nature, like sales taxes and things like that. The other option is, because oftentimes raising taxes is very unpopular, you oftentimes actually see cuts in other areas. So like cuts to, what are they going to cut? If they're going to keep everyone else on the program, then you're going to have to cut somewhere else. And that's might be education or other areas. Education consists a large part of state budgets. Or you just can't allow the same number of people to have the same type of benefits on the program. So I think that's oftentimes, it's like the balloon, you got to, the balloon or whatever that's you're squeezing. But good question. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to come back over here. I see a question in the back over there. I'm sorry to the mic runners for how much you're running around.
Hello. Oh gosh, that's loud. Sorry, my name is Mia Snyder, and I'm from Washington College in Maryland. And I was wondering what rhetoric you recommend that we approach our constituents with, because obviously I know that what we're learning here is very important, all the statistics, all of our personal stories, but ultimately I feel like it won't be making a difference if we happen to say a trigger word that we don't even know exists for this particular type of belief system that we might be entering into. Or if you guys have any recommendations in general, aside from things to avoid, on things to say and push. I know that we have our mantra, but I was wondering if there's anything else aside from that. Thank you.
this is something that I've had to struggle with when going to congressional visits. We try to avoid saying welfare programs and food stamps, not because we personally believe there's anything wrong with saying welfare or food stamps because of the connotation that might pop up in the staffer's mind. Because the rhetoric that we've seen when people are trying to push these budget cuts is, in quote, into cradle to grave dependence on it. And that's the kind of language that they're viewing when you say those kind of words. So keeping it around social service programs, crucial programs, healthcare assistance, food assistance would be the best advice I could give you.
And I would say, I mean, we all talk about it, but the most powerful thing that any one of us can do is like share stories, right? Those really concrete examples of why we think it's important that people be able to access health coverage and have a program like SNAP that's available for folks when they need it. Like the importance of just having these programs and why healthcare and food assistance is important. I think just bringing it back down to that level is usually one of the most compelling things you can share.
Thank you. Okay. I see a hand over here on the right. Or my right.
I'm Sydney. I'm from Voting Access, and I'm here with Michigan United. Is it possible, and then this may be a dumb question because how Medicaid and SNAP are so intertwined, but in lobbying, is it possible to come across a legislator who maybe is in support of keeping Medicaid, but just against or is for the cutting of SNAP?
Yes. Yeah, good question. Actually, what we have seen is that is actually one of the things that we're pretty concerned about. Medicaid has been getting much more attention and pushback, and we haven't seen that same level of outcry against SNAP benefits. So we've seen, there have been a few letters that have gone around with members of Congress saying, I don't want to see cuts to Medicaid. I don't want to see people in my district lose health coverage. We have seen a lot less of that on SNAP. And that is one area that we really want to see. We think is important to show more kind of that there is more grassroots energy around that. Again, this is one of the ones across the political spectrum we are not hearing enough about concerns around cuts to SNAP. Did that answer your question? I don't know. Okay.
Okay, good. Okay, over here, let's go over here on the very far side.
Hi, my name is Amelia. I'm with the University of Mount Union. I'm okay. Just full. I'm not good at like sugarcoating, so I'm just gonna say it as straightforward. I think when it comes to a lot of the, especially in the current administration, I have a huge fear, I think currently, about like how to actually make our lawmakers care. I think understanding that this is, I think most people in this room, if not everybody, should be able to understand why this should be a bipartisan issue. But especially in not just like the federal administration, but in our local government too, I think I'm seeing a lot of like Don said something really awesome yesterday about how, and very accurate about how our system is designed to keep people poor. And so it makes me wonder if like, knowing that even though our stories are important to talk to these lawmakers about why this should happen, I think I have this fear that it just won't matter in the end. And I don't want to lose hope or give up hope, which is why I think we're all here. But seeing how we have seen lawmakers and make constant decisions that continuously tear us down as a country and as a group of people, I think I just worry about how to really get through to them rather than them just say, just another group that I'm checking off of my list, off of my schedule. And so I don't know how to ask that question, I guess, but like, I don't know if you understand what I mean
Yes,
when I say
yeah.
that.
We hear it a lot. A lot of folks are saying, like, really, I feel like for many people, it's like, I feel like I've been trying to make my voice heard and I'm still seeing policies that I disagree with. It doesn't matter. And what Katherine said, I think I will say two things. One is every member, again, I'm going into Republican offices, I'm going into Democratic offices, I'm going to folks across the spectrum, and every time say, what should we do? What do we need to be doing? And they are saying, please be those meetings, those emails, they're saying, and I have seen it from when I go into offices and they talk about how they are, what they are hearing and then what they are trying to translate to leadership. Again, the math is very hard to make this work, to be able to get enough votes to support these cuts. And so what I have also seen is, the member, you have the meeting and you're probably there's oftentimes the staffer is there and their job is to just maybe listen and, you're like, am I getting through? You're not giving me any assurances of anything. And then they go back and then I get to hear, because I get to have these follow-up conversations oftentimes. And it's like, okay, well, the boss has told leadership that this is a red line, that this thing we won't agree to, this thing we will, or this thing they're saying we won't. So there are conversations, I think, that then happen behind the scenes. There's a lot less willingness to go public on some of the stuff, but a lot of times there are conversations because also, like, people don't, like, members of Congress don't want to lose their jobs, right? They want to get reelected in 2 years' time. And if a lot of their constituents lose health care and access to food assistance, that's not good for their prospects kind of going forward. So I can say I've just heard it again and again and again, and I have seen it time and time again where it seems like stuff isn't going through, but then you kind of learn about some of the things that are happening behind the scenes that they don't necessarily want to be public about, but they're trying to do to try and. So I don't know if that's any consolation. There are a lot of things that I feel is really hard to stop in this environment. This right here, I think we can do. I don't know if there's anything you want to.
I would say, because what you're feeling is completely valid, because I've also felt it at the same time, and talking with Amelia and knowing about the history of these two programs specifically have always been attacked, and they're still here today. So that is comforting, and knowing that it's 330 of y'all in here. This large of an outcry for it, it doesn't make it politically hostile yet, but it does make it politically uncomfortable. And they should feel uncomfortable when they go into the chambers and they have to vote. If you're making decisions for everybody in the country, you should have that on your consciousness, that you're taking food away from a kid, that you're taking elders' healthcare away, that you're taking a veteran's healthcare away. You should have to sit with that. Also, they don't want to lose their jobs. We have coalitions that break up the data of you won that seat by such a small margin, and guess what? There are more people in Medicaid in your district than you won by your seat. So you actually cannot afford to vote in the way that is against the people. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, I'll underscore a bit what Katherine just said, that like we're really not alone. Like, not only are there hundreds of people here, but we're not the only group of hundreds of people that are like trying to push for this, right? Like, they are in coalition meetings, they are talking to other organizations. There is a lot of movement out there for this. And we need that many people to really have such a big social impact. So looking around the room, hopefully you can feel like, okay, this is a loud, strong voice we have in here. And you can remember that there are many, many people not here at this specific event that are doing the same work. And I love the behind the scenes thing you said, because one year we were working on community violence interrupters funding. So trying to get money for community violence intervention. And we were doing our work, hearing things here and there. And then one day, one of our organizers heard in a lobby visit that oh, there's word that FCNL constituents are meeting with offices about community violence interrupter funding. And so we didn't know that a bunch of offices were talking to each other about the fact that we were in there bothering them about this, you know, lobbying them about this. And that was so fun to find out because we don't always hear exactly what impact we're having. And the impact isn't always the very, very, very end result. There's many impacts along the way that then get you to that end result that you want. And Spring Lobby Weekend has always had an impact in the issue we're working on every year. Last year, the bill we lobbied for got like over a dozen new co-sponsors after we lobbied a bunch of different offices. So it's definitely possible, and we've seen it happen at this event. We've seen it happen in our other programs, even if you don't feel it, which is totally valid. Because yeah, with Katherine, like, you know, I've also struggled a bit. I think we're all struggling a little bit with that, but it's just holding on to those stories and just remembering some of what we just said. So hopefully that helps you. And I'm sure you asked a question that a lot of people. I appreciate that.
And Larissa, the bill didn't just get 12 new goes later past the Senate.
There we go. Thank you, Amelia. Okay, I'll go over here now. Here in the very far end, towards the front. Yes, with the glasses. Yes.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jessie Perez. I'm not attending with any group. I'm just here by myself from New York. My question is that one of the politicians said that they don't want to cut Medicaid and SNAP. They just want to get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse. One of the speakers yesterday, I mean, we all know that is obviously not true. And I myself am on these programs, and I know many people in my family and people in my life rely on these programs, including self. I think one of the speakers yesterday said that the percentage of fraud for these programs is only about 1%, which is obviously a very small percentage. What can we say as a counter argument to that if a legislator says, oh, we just want to get rid of fraud and abuse?
Yeah, I can say, so for the SNAP program, there is a less than a 3% error rate. An error rate means some people getting less money than they should, right? So it's, SNAP is incredibly efficient. And if you want to reduce that, you need to actually spend more money into the administration of the program. I would say, so one thing is the congressional budget, I mean, the numbers are just so huge. There is not $880 billion of fraud in Medicaid. Like there is not $230 billion of fraud or waste in the SNAP program. Like that, the numbers don't add up. And the Congressional Budget Office actually did analysis, and they were like, there is no way you can get to those numbers without having drastic cuts to Medicaid and SNAP. That many people will lose their health care. Like the Congressional Budget Office is their job is just to calculate the numbers. They're not, they're nonpartisan. They just calculate the numbers. And so I think that is just kind of, I think there's no way to do that. And if of course there are ways that we can make the programs better, but right now these numbers, it's clear it's cutting the programs. I don't know. I hope that's helpful. I don't know if Katherine.
Only thing I would add, if you don't hear specifically waste, fraud, and abuse, I've often heard, oh, we're not taking it with the cleaver, we're doing it with the scalpel. And they usually just mean work requirements or shifting costs to states. And when we did the whole spiel, work requirements and shifting costs to states, it's basically a cleaver. A matter of fact, it's actually a sledgehammer because you're still kicking people off of the program. So don't let them give you the runaround behind it, and don't let them hide behind the vagueness of it either. Because they know what they're doing. They just don't know what they're doing.
So I'll take one more question. Okay, I'll go all the way in the back over there in front of the Love Thy Neighbor sign.
Hi, my name is Felipe, and I'm here with Washington College as well. I'm a chair member for a service part of our fraternity, and one of the things we do is go out and do service events for veterans. And I'm wondering, how can we take what we've learned here about that and bring it back to them, because speaking with the Veterans Caucus in Annapolis last week, we learned that a bunch of veterans are on these programs, and many of us do have families or do have friends who have served in this, and obviously they're a big part of that. So how would we take this to different events and also say, we're here to support you, but also here are things that you might be able to do as well?
That is terrific. And I think the veteran's voice is also another really, really powerful voice in these conversations. And you're right. Food insecurity and healthcare are huge issues around for military families. So the big thing too is that this lobbying, this effort should not end on Tuesday, right? The way that we make a difference is we have to be persistent. And that includes in the follow-up conversations that you're having with your members of Congress, like those emails, and then checking back a few weeks later. Hey, how's this? If you see like a news report or you have a new story, to follow up with them. And then the more that you can encourage folks in your community to also be reaching out, whether that's emails or letters, or if you're collecting folks or helping them get into a visit or op-eds, or like whatever you can do to help galvanize and support folks. And we are here to help you do that work. Like, we want to help support you in your advocacy after, when you go back home and continue to do this. And I know that there are some workshops and sessions later about how to continue to engage on this issue and others going forward. So I love that question, and we are here to support you. We have a lot of materials, resources, but that is key. This cannot be a one-day gig. We got to keep up the pressure and continue the advocacy after Tuesday.
Yeah, and you'll see that when you get the physical copy of the lobby visit roadmap tomorrow during your state training, there is a step at the end where you confirm, who do I follow up with after this meeting? You know, you've given the ask, you've given your stories, and at the end you say, I would like to follow up. What is the best email to do that? And that follow-up can take a variety of forms, but one way that follow-up can happen, to your point about having like community members that are impacted that might want to tell their story, a follow-up could be setting up another visit, saying, I have constituents back home that were not here at this event for whatever reason, and they would like to also share their stories. What is the best email for me to set up a follow-up? And it's very easy to do a Zoom meeting. Obviously, we are all here, so we'll do it in person, but we have done so many Zoom visits. Spring Lobby Weekend was virtual 2 years in a row, so it is totally possible to lobby a DC office from wherever you are in the country, and you can get more people on a call that way too, right? So I would recommend that for anyone who's thinking like, I have people at home that absolutely need to also be telling their stories, and they're not here. I would really recommend doing another visit, because it's not a one-time thing. It is long-term work that we're doing. So unfortunately, this is where we need to wrap up for questions. There are office hours. I know I've said it 2 times already. I'll say it a 3rd time. They're at 5 p.m. So if you didn't get your questions answered, please come to those office hours. And if you did not go to the lobby table and pick up your lobbying assignments, remember to do that as well. The next session starts at 11:15. That's 12 minutes from now. So please take a break and come back for the next thing at 11:15. Thank you.
I think it was good, yeah. It also was just like 3 people's more dynamic. Yeah. I loved the questions we got.